From benefit rip-offs to telephone tip-offs, a testing time for the DSS now on BBC2 in the final programme from The System.
Take both hands and turn them as if they're doorknobs, side to side. Look over the shoulder for me. Is that as far as you're going?
Yeah. I don't risk going too far because it is painful. It's like an electric shock.
Okay. Tilt this way.
Mr. Lavin, please.
In a Department of Social Security medical centre, unemployed people who were also sick queue up to be medically tested.
I'm going to tap your knees now. Good digestion, no tummy troubles, anything?
No, nobody pays and stuff.
The welfare state will pay them extra money if the DSS doctor judges that they are too ill to work.
Well, I'll tell you what happened now, Mr. Walker. I write a report for DSS, telling them of your state of health as far as work purposes is concerned. But I don't think you've any cause to be alarmed or worried, all right?
Do you have a lot of sympathy for people you get something?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I were in their position, I'd be trying to maximise my income. There's not a lot going for them in the industrial line, especially men of the age of Mr. Walker. He's 49. I think he looks older than 49. He hasn't worked for 20 years.
Glasgow was once the second city of the British Empire, a capital of industry and prosperity. Cotton, coal, steel. For more than 200 years, it was a city secure in the wealth of its own making. Now, at the end of the century, over 30% of its citizens are dependent on state-financed social security. It's a city which, for some at least, has ceased to offer the promise of a living wage. "68,000 people in Glasgow claim long-term invalidity benefit. That's 10% of the city's population. Compared to income support, it's a good benefit to be on. It's more generous, it's not means-tested or taxed, and it continues to be paid into retirement. It's known to cynics as the bad back benefit. To be awarded the benefit, claimants are first signed off work by their GP. The claim is then checked by a DSS benefits agency doctor. In the Glasgow Medical Centre, there are 35 such doctors.
Now, we normally write to your own doctor for a report, and he's written back just to say that it's primarily pains in the feet that are the problem, plantar fasciitis. When did that start?
I've had it on and off for 7 years. You know, if I go out and I'm on my feet, I have to limit the period of time because it really gets quite sore.
Under the benefit system as it stands, there are 3 findings. You can either be unfit for work, fit for a return to your previous employment, or fit for alternative work. And lots of people who are on invalidity may not be fit to return to their old job, but they may well be fit for a light sedentary job. And push down hard, push against me. Okay, and this one. And push down hard. Okay. And the knees are okay.
Yes.
By far and away the majority of people who come here, we confirm the findings of their own doctor.
When you get the odd malingerer, are you good at spotting them?
Well, I think malingerer's the wrong term. And I don't think any of these people are malingering. I think that what they're doing is they genuinely believe they're not fit for work, or they're under a misapprehension that they should only be considered fit for their previous employment. And I think sometimes when it's explained to them that, you know, that you may not be fit for a return to your previous employment, but you're fit for a lighter job or lighter duties, they often accept that. And I think malingerers, I mean, it's an inflammatory term, really, isn't it?
Can you just push your knee right down against me here? Flatten your knee right out. That's painful, is it? Whereabouts is it painful when I touch? There.
And there.
That's fine. Has it got any better over the last few years?
No.
Oh. Have you been gaining weight since then?
I've put a lot of weight on.
Put a lot of weight on, sitting around, eh? When did you last work?
89 or 90 or something.
89? And what was it you were doing at that time? Was it labouring?
It was electric plating.
Electroplating. I think he's suitable for alternative employment. He'll not like it. He'll probably appeal. And I should think to a certain extent the doctor who's referred this one welcomes this opinion coming in. You can tell by his letter. He's having difficulty getting this man back to work, or, you know, off the invalidity benefit, which he should be, because he's in fact capable of doing a job. Because he's lame, and the people walk around with one leg and do jobs.
Do you think you're capable of working?
Not really capable of working. I can hardly walk. I can hardly stand. If I'm standing, I've got to lean against something. Have a bit of support. A walking stick.
Having been found fit for work, this man's weekly benefit will fall from £73 to £45.70. Over the last 10 years, the cost of sickness and invalidity benefits has trebled. They now cost the Treasury £8,000 million a year. Suspecting that many people on these benefits are actually capable of work, Peter Lilly, the Social Security Secretary, has been planning a major reform of the system. Invalidity benefit is to be replaced with incapacity benefit. The civil servant charged with bringing in the new benefit is Ian Stewart. He's just 8 weeks left to prepare for one of the biggest reforms to the system since 1948.
Over 1 million customers, over 40,000 staff to train, 2 computer systems to actually develop and make sure they work, new claim forms, an interest in media, interest in welfare rights, and you've got a recipe for a difficult introduction. I think my job today is to manage expectations. Any major transition from a current benefit to a new benefit with 40,000 staff to train, over 1,000 doctors to train, many doctors to recruit, 2 new computer systems, and probably an unpopular benefit to start with until we get the message across. We will not work at 100% productivity from day one. There is no question of that.
Whose expectations are you managing there?
Well, I'm managing yours at this stage. On the basis of I capture your attention and you're managed, there's a chance for the rest of us.
You've certainly done that.
And I've then got
my
to
expectations are full of foreboding. But
so 600 staff to train.
Lilly expects the change will take 240,000 people off invalidity benefit and save more than £3 billion. But if he takes Stewart's advice to introduce it more gradually, savings already promised to the Treasury will be in jeopardy.
So the people we'll have to manage after we've managed you, Secretary of State, is Treasury, if there's any knock-on effects on savings. So I have to...
There's almost by definition there aren't. No, and that's the big mistake that we've made in cases which we notice, where we've assumed that by taking on cases, your benefit savings increase. They don't actually, they go down because you actually complete fewer cases.
That's my firm belief.
So the savings might be different from what were originally.
Yes, they may be different from what you expect, but that is the results.
So
I will have to do a step diagram which outlines what I think the effects could be. I think we'll have to share it with the Treasury colleagues, and I'll probably look to yourself.
We need a profile of that sort as to what you expect to happen, so that even if they dip, if it's dipping as planned, fine. If it's dipping more than planned, there's something to be done.
So we might not...
At the heart of incapacity benefit is a new medical test intended to be more effective at weeding out those who can really work. They will also test more people, and so 700 extra doctors are being recruited nationally.
Am I right we're still behind profile on recruiting regional doctors?
We've actually recruited so far 20% more doctors than our profile of work shows we should require.
One of the journalists asked me yesterday, aren't these just the doctors that nobody else wants?
Who might answer that?
I think that they would say they were of a very good standard. Many of these people are not just general practitioners, they are people who have perhaps been in general practice for, let's say, at least 5 years, but perhaps have pursued a career and had an additional qualification as well. So on the whole, I would say that they're highly regarded.
No, it's not a jag.
No, there's no more jags, okay? That's the last jag. Right. Can I lean you forward just a wee bit and have a wee listen to your chest at the back? That's fine.
Tony Natch is a senior house officer in the National Health Service. He's applied to the Benefits Agency to become one of the doctors who will carry out the new medical test.
Okay, Pet, that's fine. You just relax yourself back now. Okay. I'm not too happy about being part of a Tory party to clamp down on anything, but I really feel there are more and more people relying on benefits and less people working to provide the money for these benefits. A lot of people are genuinely sick, that there's no doubt, but I've always deep down suspected, as have some of my friends who are in general practice, that a lot of people perhaps are swinging the lead just a wee bit.
So you were in Florida and you had an accident. What did you actually injure?
I have my 5th cervical vertebrae.
Okay.
That's fractured.
And what are your continuing problems? Symptoms?
See, when the cold really affects it, so it does. It brings a lot of pain back in my knee as well. Just a cold, I don't know why, but it makes my neck feel really numb at the back as well.
And what about smoking?
Still
Your
smoke.
chest? My goodness.
What's that way down though?
Sure. How many?
Say about 10, 15.
Tut, tut. Right. I'm sure your doctor tells you about that, don't they?
Much of the decisions about whether somebody had benefit or not was based upon a doctor's opinion. That opinion was rarely substantiated by fact or evidence, but it was just, in many cases, a gut feeling. I don't think this person is fit for work. And that's not a very good system upon which to base a way of controlling access to benefits.
Can you try and touch that ear to that shoulder? Just sort of all right, just a bit.
I can hear that.
Okay. I don't think he's fit for being a motor mechanic yet, but I would say that he probably could be considered as fit for some form of light alternative work.
That's it. I want one
One
third
more.
one. We only had a practice the first time. I think she's quite borderline, but I don't think that she's a good prospect for work. Breathing's a difficult one because, you know, you've got to get to your work and you frequently to climb stairs, and you know, that can be quite exhausting if your breathing capacity is down about 50% of normal, which this lady's is.
What we are doing with the new test is providing objective factors which you have to take into account and which can be easily explained to the person who is applying for benefit or to their doctor as to why they are considered to have passed or failed the test.
The problem for the DSS is that there is no widely accepted definition of fitness for work. It has taken the Benefits Agency 3 years to devise a procedure which will decide who is capable and who is not.
Hands like this. We wanted to make the test more objective. Let us try to discover what is necessary to do work. What functions do you require in your physical locomotor system, in your sight and your hearing, in your mental capacity? What functions are critical for work? If we could find out what factors are critical for work, then we could work out how impaired those faculties would need to be before somebody could be considered to be unfit for work.
Claimants will have to fill in a questionnaire. They'll be asked to tick boxes which best describe their ability to perform certain functions the DSS have deemed necessary for work.
With the help of an expert panel which we recruited, we have established a threshold level in each area of function. And for example, we look at the way in which people can turn pages of a book. Now that demonstrates quite a subtle manual dexterity, or being able to turn on a tap or not, or being able to pick up something small like a 2-pence coin. Now these activities were considered by the panel to be very important in determining whether somebody was able to work or not.
There are also questions asking claimants whether they can walk up a flight of stairs, how long they can sit in a chair, and if they can pick up a bag of potatoes. The cost of the old invalidity benefit has grown, partly because people have been staying on it for increasingly longer periods. The mechanism for reassessing the claims is haphazard, and in many cases people are not rechecked for several years.
Okay, what's the problem there?
Just now, I'm a recovering alcoholic.
When did that problem start?
Well, I've been an alcoholic all my life, I think, you know, but the problem got so bad that I had to seek help, so I started going to AA.
Right. Is that what you're doing now?
Yeah, doing meetings and things.
When did you start?
Well,
it's not surprising that he's been sent for a medical. He has been on invalidity benefit for some years, in fact, since 1989. Bowels and bladder?
Fine.
No problems. You smoke?
I do smoke.
Many?
10 to 20 a day.
I would suggest that that man would be fit for limited work. The likelihood is that he will be disallowed.
Do you ever take into consideration the practicality of someone like him getting a job?
I am not in the business of having to think about whether there's a job available for him. I'm in the business of providing a medical opinion as to whether or not he's capable of work. In our area, I accept that jobs are thin on the ground, but that's not what you're on invalidity benefit for. So, you know, I'm asked if this man is fit for some form of work, and that is the opinion that I have to give, whether or not he's fit for some form of work.
There are 4 weeks to go before the new benefit is due to start. DSS ministers have accepted Stewart's argument that existing invalidity claimants should be gradually exposed to the new test. But it means that the savings from the new benefit are estimated to be £90 million less than expected.
I recognise you this thing. Is it okay if I sit next to you, because I'm going to have to take you?
William Hague has been given ministerial responsibility for incapacity benefit. He now has to balance Stewart's plans for a smooth introduction with the department's desire to make savings.
what is the range of options available if for some reason we had to get some of that estimated 90 million back, and we're saying having more doctors isn't really a feasible solution and doesn't make a big difference anyway in the timescale. And the only other thing one can do is load the system more heavily and take all the risks you've been talking about.
If you load the system more heavily and the capacity of the administrative staff and the doctors is as we predict, all you'll actually get in actual fact is more cases in the system.
With all the risks. Exactly. No, I take the point, but that is what you're telling me is that is the only thing that one can do if you wanted a sort of high risk, high return strategy.
Well, the absolute numbers in the first, say, 3 months are very low, so the absolute numbers of arrears you'd actually be sitting on wouldn't be enormous, and I mean, in terms of the workload for the doctors and the workload for the districts, it wouldn't be vast.
Kevin, it's not the absolute number of the workloads. We keep actually going to the absolute numbers of work. We do not know the absolute numbers of workloads because we do not know how many questionnaires will be fully completed. We do not know how many customers will have to be chased. We do not know how much correspondence will generate in their offices by issuing the questionnaire. There is no absolute numbers in this.
Tragedy is it's all funny money anyway, because partly for the reason Joe gives, that we're not really comparing what we could have with what we're going to get, because we can't have the budgeted figure however we did it. And it's also rather false argument, because that we know the real answer is going to be none of these figures, don't we? It's going to be something. The actual outturn will be bigger savings or lower savings that may be different by a much bigger margin than 90 million. We're only arguing about budgetary assumptions, the outturn of which we have no further control over. Depends whether the test works, how it works. And so on.
We've heard the figure of 200,000 people that are expected to be ineligible for incapacity benefit. I don't know whether they would have passed the test or failed the test, but they would have been found fit for work. Is that the figure that you're working on?
Well, I must make it clear, we're not working to any targets at all on finding people fit. I must make that absolutely clear. We have obviously estimated how many people could be found fit if the medical test actually performs in a way which we think it might. And the number is approximately 240,000 over the next 2 to 3 years.
Will they still be eligible for another benefit?
It is possible they could go on to receive other benefits. And
Lesser benefits, with less money?
It would depend on the circumstances. In the main, I think you're correct to assume that, Judy. What would happen, I think, that most people would actually go to the Employment Service Agency, register for work if they wanted to register for work, if they thought they were fit for work, and they could then claim what is presently unemployment benefit or income support.
But a lot of people could be worse off.
Some of our customers will undoubtedly be worse off if they fail the medical test, if they cease receiving incapacity benefit, and if they have to take a benefit or register for unemployment and then in receipt of unemployment benefit and or income support. They may be worse off because these benefits can be less than the present rate of invalidity benefit and what incapacity benefit will be.
Although some customers are exempt from the all-work test, many people will attend a medical. The assessment begins as soon as the doctor meets the customer in the waiting room.
Mrs. McSporran, please. The doctor that works for the department will be examining people and applying the new medical test. Will not be making the decision whether somebody's fit for work or not. All the doctor will be doing is giving his opinion with evidence of what level of activity, how far a person can walk, how long they can stand for, what they can pick up with their hands, what they can do with their shoulders, what their mental capacity is. That's what the BAMS doctor will do.
How far do you have to walk the dog in the morning around the pond?
It's about half a mile, I suppose.
And you can do that without stopping, can you?
By asking questions about the claimant's daily routine, the doctor assesses his ability to perform certain functions. He then ticks sets of boxes, known as descriptors, each of which gives the claimant a score.
What sort of a dog is it?
I call her a pedigree bits of this and bits of that. But she's a pedigree.
Before the benefits agency doctors can apply the medical test, they must be taught particular techniques which the DSS believe will enable them to elicit the information they need.
And if Gemma brings the old sock and drops it at your feet, then you're quite able to pick it up when you sat on the settee.
If I'm in the mood to play with it.
We won't go into that.
First thing you're going to do is you're going to establish rapport. And then what?
You will observe whether they can arise from a chair unaided, how they walk along the corridor.
You're going to have shaking their hand.
Mm-hmm.
You'll establish what their grip's like. If somebody's shaking your hands, it's quite unlikely that they're going to be thinking through that you're going to be testing their grip. And you know from boarding how often when you try and test people's grip, they've got none.
I think you very often get a lot of information if you've sort of got into a kind of conversational way with them, because you've had this kind of friendly approach, give you more information.
I think the mistake we'll need to be careful not to make is that it can sound a bit twee. I mean, it can sound a bit trite and, oh, you've got a dog and super wonderful. Does your dog have a toy? Do you bend down to pick that toy up? People aren't silly. They're going to know what you're trying to find out.
What Margaret said about the throwing sticks for the dog is very valid. If he can bend down to pick up sticks, then he can bend to the floor.
I don't know about the shaking of hands, though.
Yes, I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't actually shake hands with my own patients.
No.
It's not
I think,
part
again,
of my
this is probably an
behaviour.
English thing. But, I mean, there's no doubt that you will get an idea.
But to shake someone's hand and then say, "Pop, benefits gone."
Or is this House really expected to sit back and wait for the hat-trick of disasters from that department?
Great care is being taken, Madam Speaker, to ensure that incapacity benefit is fairly and properly implemented. The training of benefits agency medical doctors is underway. The administrative procedures within the department are being prepared carefully, and I have every confidence that the necessary preparations are being made. Research shows high level of hostility. We will need some reputable. The public still have confidence in doctors. Despite the fact large portions of them are ill.
Yes.
And, we are going to need, if we can, some respected medical spokesman.
Well, we've already got that. We've got the Royal College of Psychiatrists supporting the test and saying have they been associated with it. We've got the Royal College of General Practitioners have already said that.
Mm. We're finding doctors generally are happier with these arrangements.
I think doctors will want to see how they work. They're happy with the theory of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if the BMA are asked by journalists, are you happy with these arrangements, they will say
They will
no
probably
comment.
no comment, or they'll say something that will be exactly that. And in fact, some of the members of the General Medical Services Committee may even say that they are not happy with the test. There's no doubt about that. They will do that.
When are we announcing the 4% fee increase?
As soon as the Secretary of State has looked at it, which is this week, I think.
He's written today.
He's already
right.
Okay.
Let's go out today.
Oh well.
So doctors aren't going to lose money by having less certificates to sign? Because
Oh
that
no,
might be enough.
no, certainly. Oh, this is quite.
We are going to pay them more.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. No problem.
And still they're going to be unhappy.
No bribe.
Well, they are going to say they are happy. Right, and BA staff, last but not least. Looks like everything is being done that should be done.
I would say so. They're turning up in their incapacity benefit corporate dress. They can actually sing the song. They do the dance. They've watched the video, and they've got the T-shirts.
And wheel the wheelbarrow.
And they wheel the wheelbarrow in it. So I think that everybody that's even remotely connected with incapacity benefit understands it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and what's the implications of it.
From now on, everyone claiming benefit because they're too ill to work must apply for the new incapacity benefit. All except those who are severely ill or disabled will be gradually called in to undergo the medical test.
So you've got problems sitting and getting up from a chair, and standing, walking up down the stairs, bending and kneeling, lifting and carrying. So really just about everything. Everything's difficult. Full house.
New claimants who pass the test will get less money. The new benefit's taxed, and for the first 6 months it's paid at a lower rate.
You said you've had a bad back, and you've got nerves, swollen legs, the varicose veins, and a lot of acid in your stomach.
We've got a report from your GP, and we've got the questionnaire that you filled out. And I noticed that your problem is also with your back. What I would like to do now is just take you through a typical day in your own life, okay?
What I'm going to do is compare the customer self-assessment questionnaire and his assessment of his own disabilities with the assessment of the medical officer. And what I will then do is score the disabilities, his degree of disability. There are 14 functions, physical functions, each of which has a potential score of 15.
And how many do you need to...
You only require 15 points. So on one functional area, a person could qualify for benefit.
What sort of time do you get up in the morning?
I usually get up about 8:45.
Okay. And how are you feeling when you're getting up?
Sometimes stiff. I've got to roll over them.
Okay. How do you cope with that? What are you doing first thing?
Well, I find the most relaxing thing is this. I sit at the table. If I sit for so long, it gets stiff and sore. And I've got to get up and do a wee walk around the house.
And how often do you have to do that?
Well, every other half an hour, you know.
The customer himself said that he cannot sit for more than 10 minutes without having to move. The medical officer has come to the conclusion that he can sit for more than 10 minutes but not more than 30, so he has marked him down. The man's own assessment would have given him a score of 15. The assessment by the medical officer has given him a score of 7. Because of the detail in the clinical examination and by the gentleman's performance, I'm accepting the medical officer's opinion, so I'll be marking him 7 on the score sheet.
Well now, I'd like to take your blood pressure first of all, if you'd like to slip off your jacket, and then we'll have a wee look at your back.
Behaviour observed during the assessment. He was observed to take off his jacket. So the man said he can't reach behind to put on a jacket or coat. He was able to take it off. Presumably at the end of the interview he must have put his jacket back on again. There's nothing mentioned here about him having to be assisted back with his jacket. I think that would have been commented on had he required assistance.
Now, what about swivelling your shoulders? Again, be careful and just only do what you feel able to do. Now, can you go the other direction?
He also, during the clinical examination, was found to have full range of shoulder movement. So I have to go along with the medical officer in this case that the man has no problem, and I would score him 0 on reaching.
So the doctor and you completely disagree with the man?
Oh, the doctor completely disagrees with the man, and I go along with the doctor.
Okay, that's fine. I'll let you get back. You want to put your jacket back on?
In the self-assessment, this gentleman had self-assessed himself at 78 points. I've already marked him down, but he could well have quite a high score, well in excess of 15. But I know he's going to remain on benefit. There's no doubt he is incapable of work within terms of the all-work test.
So obviously when you have all this feeling of faintness, you've been trying to avoid doing things that have made you feel like that. When was the last time you actually fainted?
It was
It was in a public place, I remember that.
Was it right at the beginning of your pregnancy, or was it?
No, it was not that recent ago.
That's what is recently?
About a few weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
I was out somewhere with somebody and I stood for too long and I just fell in front of them and passed out.
Must have given them a bit of a fright, didn't you? Now, she said that she had an episode, she stated here that she has an episode of altered consciousness at least once a week. That may have been when she filled in the form, but she said when she spoke that she really hadn't had an episode of fainting for 4 or 5 weeks, a few weeks ago. So obviously it's not at least once a week that this is happening. So this is where sometimes it becomes a bit difficult if you're dealing with this type of thing rather than a patient who has fits. So we could say she hasn't even had one in the last month, so she's had we would use the next descriptor down, which suggests that she's had one at least twice in the last 6 months, these episodes of fainting during her pregnancy, but not otherwise.
She said that she loses consciousness or she faints once a week, whereas the doctor says it only happens once every 4 or 5 weeks. And the doctor's actually asked her when was the last time you fainted, and she said it was 4 weeks ago. So it seems as though the doctor's description is a bit more reasonable.
Why do you go with the month ago rather than the week ago?
Well, I'd say that it's obvious that the doctor's asked a direct question at the interview, when was the last time you fainted, and the doctor's qualified to ask to know what the right questions to ask are. So I'd say if there's a contradiction there, it's more likely that the doctor's managed to get the right answer at the interview, and possibly she's written something, hasn't written the right thing on her form. I had them up, and that comes to 25, so she's over the 15, and she's counted as being incapable of work.
So this is the risk service, and that bit there is...
There are two different sets of...
But is that the initial point that it comes in? Is that where the mail comes into customer service?
Ian Stewart's plan to test existing claimants in gradually increasing numbers is working out well in practice. The system is just about coping with the huge change.
I'll be making changes as we go along, I hope, to actually give
But just how effective the doctor's work will be in helping to achieve the savings earmarked by ministers is a matter for speculation.
But we're actually trialling a lot of things.
The medical test is still an unknown quantity.
We're assuming that a large number, in actual fact, do not have to go for medical examination, but of the numbers that go for medical examination, 50% will be found fit.
The majority of the doctors who are going to work the new system are the doctors who have been used to finding most people incapable, that is, finding them unfit. Now, we're not going to find them unfit anymore, we're going to choose descriptors. I think it's going to surprise me greatly if we get anywhere near 50% finding people fit in this new system.
I'm in the hands of professionals here, and the professionals have devised a medical test, and they've actually fixed some assumptions around it with that medical test, and the assumption is that 50% of people who are eventually subjected to a medical test will be found fit.
Yeah. People don't get the benefit given that we're not actually making a decision, you know, right now. Who do you think they'll blame?
Who do I think they'll blame? I think they could blame anybody. They might blame the person that delivers that decision to them. That could be the adjudication officer in the form of a letter. They may come back in here to ask to see the doctor that examined them. I don't think they'll do that, but so people will be upset and genuinely upset by what happens round about this. So we've got to bear that in mind, and that's why I'm saying it's very important that we actually deal with people professionally.
What happens if somebody says it's the test itself, it's the fiend?
Well, That's the real crux as far as I'm concerned. So we must be able to satisfy ourselves that you've carried out that test, if you like, to the best of your ability, to the highest standard. And if we can isolate the problem down to the test, we can actually take steps, if you like, to change that test. And there's contingency arrangements in place to change the descriptors, yeah, to actually change the scoring if necessary, yeah, and actually to scrap the test, I think.
Mr. G. McGowan?
He will appreciate that if this new benefit is to work properly, the quality of the medical assessment is vital. Can he give us...
The new benefit has been in operation for 3 months, and political pressure to evaluate the effect of the policy is building up. Alistair Burt, recently promoted to be Minister of State at the DSS, has taken over the responsibility for incapacity benefit.
It's clearly vital to keep this benefit under very close scrutiny and control. The build-up of work has been created so as to ensure that that will happen, and I will be taking a very careful eye on the matters related to the medical test, as the Honourable Gentleman has mentioned.
There are now 94 doctors in Glasgow applying the medical test, nearly 3 times the number there were for the old benefit. Some of them are finding that applying the test is not as straightforward as the training videos suggested.
How many steps are on the stairs? There's usually about 12 in each one. Do you have to stop halfway up? I see. So are you able to sort of get onto the stairs and walk right up, or do you have to stop?
No, stop halfway up.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, if you have a light carrier with maybe just a pint of milk and a loaf of bread in it, could you carry that?
Well, we buy all our groceries at the weekend and use it in our deep freeze. We don't need it, do we?
Right, so you're not doing any shopping at all. What about in the garden then? Can you do any gardening?
No.
Not at all?
My wife digs it now.
And you can't lift a bag of potatoes of £5 with that side. Now, this is maybe a wee bit misleading. It's not lifting it
carrying it
off the floor. No,
I could lift it.
It's lifting it from a surface like that and maybe putting it somewhere else.
Oh, I could do that. I just couldn't carry it.
Right. Yes. That is misleading, that one.
What about carrying something down to the garden then? Could you carry the spade down, for instance?
Don't have to. They're in the garage.
Well, you take them out of the garage into the garden.
Wife gets them out.
Right.
The only thing I take out of the garage is the car.
Once you're up and dressed, what sort of things might you do yourself in the morning?
Just thinking about to get money for drugs. Beg, phone round my family, try to tap, anything, steal, whatever.
Can't you look after himself or herself without help from others? I never know quite what they mean by this. Do they mean get up and wash and dress and feed themselves? Or do they mean get to places?
She didn't understand the climbing the stairs question. It's one of the problems with the questions that they're so obscure that sometimes they say they cannot do something when they can because it's painful. And this woman was the other way around. She couldn't climb stairs without having to stop. So that means she cannot climb 12 stairs without stopping. So that she can't do it then.
You were saying to me when you wake up in the morning, you sometimes feel a bit rough. Can you put that into words, how you feel?
Well, if I'm an alcoholic and I have bronchitis, what's wrong with my neck? I'm just stone in my ears. It's just a family problem. I'm away for the family. And it's drink a man at a time.
Okay.
That's how I feel. I'm not drinking in the morning when I wake up.
So when you wake up, you've got to go out and
I've got to have
a few
settle
times.
in. Maybe have a couple of cans in there the night before it.
What is it? Is it
It's
Supermag
just
or is it?
depressed. So it is. It blows up me.
What sort of thoughts go through your head?
Well, it's... What have I done wrong?
Do you think you've done much wrong?
I have,
Aye, have you?
I've kind of ruined myself.
Have you?
Like some... Knowing my family. That's the way I look at it.
Okay. Coping with pressure. Does he or she frequently find there are so many things to do that he or she gives up because of fatigue, apathy or disinterest? I think he probably would, but I don't have enough evidence. I'm going to put yes. Chancing it a bit. And I'm going to put yes because it's my own gut feeling. That's not what the adjudication officers want to know or hear, but that's the way medicine works.
This business about objectivity is quite tricky, isn't it?
Yes, it doesn't exist. No one is completely objective. Especially if a man comes in and sits and chats to you and tells you about problems he wouldn't normally tell a complete stranger. You gain some insight into his personality, you develop a rapport, and it's difficult to go through the sheet knowing that you're going to lose him money. You can't just do that. You have to... You do become involved to a certain extent. Only a small extent, but perhaps a small, crucial extent.
Incapacity benefit is 9 months old. The first figures showing the number of people who have failed the medical test and been disallowed benefit are coming in.
You'll recall that I was asked at P&Q's just the other week by David Weekly about this apprehension which has grown up, that because the disallowances appear to be smaller than people anticipated, presumably this is putting some pressure on our policy for targets and savings. Now, I don't think that's correct, and I gave an answer because I don't believe we're that much under pressure. But again, as we're getting towards the end of the year, I want to be sure that this answer is still correct and still consistent. So, again, reassure me that we're not running off the rails here.
No, what we've got is a delay factor which features in the process, which is longer than previously forecast, so that the level of disallowances is lower than we'd originally forecast, but is picking up month on month, so it's building. And I think the other point, as well as I made earlier, is that there appears to be, and the end of the year will give us a better situation, more behavioural impact than perhaps we'd anticipated, as I've explained to you before, in terms of people voluntarily leaving, not pursuing their claim. And if you look, I mentioned that claims are cumulatively 33,000 down from where we expected. Now, it could be that those are people who would have claimed, that we would have taken forward, and they may have fallen for disallowance. In terms of the disallowances, these continue to rise month on month. January's unvalidated figures are some 16,000, which shows an increase over December.
The ridiculous misuse of a word. 11 letters from a classic play. See if our contestants find the answer at 12:05, and that's except in Scotland.
Eric Wilkinson has been on sickness benefits for 5 years. He damaged his leg when a scaffold he was working on collapsed, and he hasn't worked since. But his claim for incapacity benefit has just been turned down. He failed the new medical test.
This man actually had a knee problem. He said he had problems sitting in a chair, rising from sitting, standing and walking up and down stairs, bending and kneeling, reaching with his arms and lifting and carrying.
And how many points did he give himself?
He gave himself 97 points.
97?
Yes, but when he went to see the medical advisor at BAMS, they selected descriptors and the adjudication officer only scored 9 points.
I can't honestly see me getting back to work full-time or even part-time, because I just cannot. I can't stand too long. I can't sit too long. I've got to move about, I've got to get up. I just scrap heap, you know, as far as I know.
And what age are you?
43.
In this case, this man said he couldn't sit in a chair comfortably for more than 30 minutes because his knee became painful. The medical advisors at BAMS said the client hardly does any kind of work at home, states he sits for most of the day looking at videos, films or TV, able to sit in a friend's car when he goes out to the pub. The client sat about for 30 minutes without any distress. That was at the examination, and there was no evidence of muscle wasting in his thighs. So the adjudication officer actually in this case preferred the medical advisor's opinion and based their decision on that, and the score for that sitting in a chair was 0 points.
Eric has joined the queue of claimants who have lodged appeals against benefits agency disallowances. Whether he gets incapacity benefit will now depend on a hearing before an independent tribunal.
If you've been paying into the system, if something like this happens to you, you should be allowed something back from the system.
I mean, Eric's been working since he left school. This accident happened 5 years ago, so he's worked for longer than he hasn't worked. So all those years he's been paying national insurance, as everybody does, that we just feel that now what money we're getting is eventually, if the system goes the way they want it to go, it's going to be getting less and less and less as time goes on, because they're wanting Eric to sign on and say he's available for work, which is basically what you are doing, you're signing on, but he's not available for work because he's not fit for work. And if he keeps doing that, doesn't go for restarts or retraining or anything like that, they do effectively start taking money off you because you're not willing to fall into their system.
Eric won his appeal against the benefits agency decision. The tribunal gave him 19 points, just 4 points above the benefit threshold. His family of 4 now live on £100 and 50 pence a week. In its first year, around 90,000 claimants failed the new medical test. That's less than half the number forecast. The department maintained that incapacity benefit will nonetheless achieve the £340 million savings estimated for the first year. But more than half of these savings will be made because under the new benefit many claimants will get less money. Those in Britain judged too ill to work are likely to be even poorer.
And it's a non-medical person who looks at it, the adjudication officer. He reads the papers, you know, gets an idea of how well or unwell you are. Of course, the system as it stands is that there isn't enough money to go around. How you justify it to your own conscience is by saying that, well, I'm directing the funds to the people who probably most need it. But in an ideal world, they would all get it, wouldn't they? Instead of sitting here trying to get people off benefit, we should really be out trying to improve people's housing and improve people's education, improve industry. You know, and that's you're beginning to get into political arguments there, but it's not meant to be political. I think they say that's just not applied to the government of today, but the government of tomorrow. They all owe it to the people to improve their lot, and then this place would disappear.
In real terms, the social security system costs 8 times more than it did in 1948. People are living longer, and there are many more benefits paid to many more people. But the system was designed for a nation that was fully employed, and for families that stayed together. Most of the £90 billion we spend this year is the price we must pay for our social and economic failure. To find the end of the system, you have to travel to a corner of Northern Ireland. Every week, 16 million used gyros are delivered here to be sorted, catalogued and stored for 12 months. They're evidence of the money paid out every week for the DSS by British post offices. This is how the DSS checks the accuracy of the £50,000 million with which it must reimburse the post office every year. But only a tiny fraction of the millions of gyro checks stored here are actually ever counted. By now, the hard cash from these gyros paid to millions of British social security claimants has been spent keeping a quarter of the nation alive. And now the paper the gyros are printed on will meet a different need.